Chloe would never have imagined, not even in her wildest dreams, how she could have driven me away when she loved me so much. The moment Chloe flipped on the living room light, she froze in place. The entire villa was empty. Besides her, there was no one else. In the middle of the night, while I was fast asleep, Chloe, lying next to me, suddenly cried out, "Ethan!" The next moment, she jolted awake and quickly burrowed into my arms. "Ethan, don't go." My body tensed slightly. "What's wrong?" Chloe's eyes were red with lingering fear. "I had a nightmare that you left me." "Thank God. It was just a dream and you're still here." I lowered my gaze, wanting so badly to tell her that soon I wouldn't be. Perhaps because of the dream, the next day Chloe insisted on taking me to work with her. I refused, but she pleaded relentlessly, and not wanting to waste any more time arguing, I had no choice but to go with her. As soon as we entered Chloe's office, I saw that her desk was covered with pictures of me. Seeing me staring at them, she wrapped her arms around me from behind and nuzzled my back dependently. "A lot of men try to hit on me, but putting these pictures out has worked wonders. Don't worry, honey. I know how to conduct myself." I looked down at her without a word. Just then, her assistant knocked on the door to remind her that the meeting was starting. Chloe hugged me reluctantly for another moment before turning to leave, telling me to wander around for a bit. I had no desire to explore, but I didn't want to stay in her office either. So, I ended up walking through each floor of the building. Around noon, I got a call from the immigration office. "Mr. Ford, we still need you to come in person to sign one last document for your immigration paperwork." Just as I was about to respond, a familiar voice came from behind me. "What immigration?" I spun around to see Chloe standing there, her expression shifting dramatically. The moment I hung up, she rushed over and grabbed my hand. "Ethan, who's immigrating?" My expression remained neutral. "An old classmate of mine. He's planning to move and wanted to get together one last time before he leaves." Perhaps because my expression was so calm, Chloe never considered the possibility that I was lying, but she still hugged me tightly, frightened. "I thought it was you. You scared me to death." I forced a slight smile. "It's just immigration. Why such a strong reaction?" Chloe's heart was pounding in her chest. She explained helplessly. "Ethan, you know my family's background. We have 3 generations of military service. We can't just leave the country." She paused, still seeming worried, and reminded me again. "If I ever do anything wrong, you can hit me. You can yell at me, but you can't leave the country. If you did, I'd never be able to find you. That would be worse than death." Held tightly in her arms, I simply offered a faint smile. "I understand." Perhaps sensing something was off, Chloe kept me by her side for the next few days, never letting me out of her sight. Even when a friend opened a new private club and invited their whole circle, she insisted on bringing me along. With her watching me so closely, I had no idea how I'd get to the immigration office to sign the papers, so I just went with her. The moment we stepped into the private suite, a group of her friends swarmed us. "Ethan, just relax and have a good time tonight. We know you prefer things quiet, so we switched the music to piano and cleared the whole place out for you. Come sit over here, Ethan. We've got all this fruit washed and sliced for you." Chloe watched them and raised an eyebrow. "Since when did you all become so accommodating? Everyone knows Ethan is the love of your life, Chloe. Seriously, we all know you forgot all about us the second you got married. Our hearts are broken, so all we can do is join you in spoiling him rotten." The room erupted in laughter. Just as the mood was at its peak, a tall figure walked in. It was Julian Miller. The manager hurried forward to stop him. "I'm sorry, sir, but the club is closed for a private event tonight. We aren't accepting other guests." But Julian pushed him aside and walked right in. "Ethan, Chloe, so you're the ones who booked the whole place. What a coincidence. You don't mind if I join, do you?" Without waiting for an answer, He came right over and sat down next to me. Then, in the dim lighting, he pulled Chloe's hand under his shirt. I couldn't help but glance at Chloe. Her expression had changed the instant Julian appeared, as if she wanted to throw him out. But the moment her hand was pulled against his abs, she closed her eyes. Struggled to control my emotions, pretending I hadn't noticed a thing. Midway through the party, I went to the restroom and splashed cold water on my face again and again, trying to clear my head. A provocative voice suddenly spoke from beside me. "Ethan, want to make a bet? Let's see if Chloe stays with you for the rest of the night, or if she sneaks away to be with me." My body trembled slightly. Without a word, I shook the water from my hands and went back to the suite. A few moments later, Julian walked in too, and as he passed Chloe, he discreetly tapped her phone. Chloe opened her phone, and the short line of text made her expression change instantly. She then casually tossed the phone into her purse and stood up abruptly. "Ethan, I have to step out and make a call. You stay here. I'll be right back." Without waiting for my reply, she hurried away. A moment later, Julian also made an excuse and left. Watching them disappear, I struggled to breathe. The pain in my heart was a sharp blade, slicing me over and over, a merciless torture. The agony was so intense that all I could think about was dragging Chloe down to hell with me to make her hurt even more. As the night wore on, Chloe, who had said she would be right back, still hadn't returned. Her friends were visibly uncomfortable, exchanging silent glances. I said nothing and quietly left the suite. They all fawned over me as they walked me to my car. Just as I got in the car, I realized I had forgotten my wallet. As I was about to head back to the suite to get it, I heard a long sigh of relief from inside. We finally got him out of here any longer, and I would have definitely blown it. I have no idea how Chloe manages to put on such a good act. In front of him, my feet felt nailed to the floor. The conversation inside continued. Are Chloe and Julian still at it? How long has it been? Almost 5 hours, right? What's the rush? Still, they're being so obvious about it. It's a good thing I was quick thinking and had them turn up the music so Ethan wouldn't notice. You have no idea how nervous I was. What's there to be nervous about? You'll get used to it after you've covered for them a few more times like I have. I turned and walked away so everyone knew. They were all in on it, hiding it from me. Her so-called best friends, so polite to my face, were helping her lie to me behind my back. I walked to the immigration office by myself, signed the papers, feeling utterly defeated, and then went home alone. 3 days later, Chloe still hadn't come back. Instead, I got a call from Julian. Julian's smug voice came through the phone. "Ethan, I have some good news for you. Chloe's pregnant. She's going to be a mom, and I'm the father. I've been with her constantly these last few days, taking such good care of her. I carry her when she gets out of bed. I even feed her myself. Oh, and the doctor said we can be intimate again after 3 months. She was so happy to hear that, and I love it." Oops. Did I say too much? You're not mad, are you, Ethan? I didn't say a word. I didn't ask a single question. I just quietly pressed the record button. Chloe, I can't wait to see how you feel when you hear this. On my birthday, Chloe spared no expense, booking the most luxurious hotel in New York City to throw me a party. The sheer opulence of the event left the guests in awe. Chloe's friends had also prepared elaborate gifts for me, but I couldn't have cared less. After what had happened, I had absolutely no goodwill left for any of them, but they didn't seem to notice. Soon it was time to cut the cake and make a wish. Chloe wrapped her arms around me. "Ethan, it's your birthday. Do you have any wishes?" In the past, I would have shaken my head and said no, because back then, her love was all I needed. But now I had one very strong wish to leave her and never see her again. I looked down at the woman gazing at me with such affection. "Will you grant me any wish I make?" Chloe paused for a second. Then her smile grew even more tender. Of course I smiled. But the smile didn't reach my eyes. In that case, I do have 3 wishes. Chloe's smile was indulgent. All right. Tell me. Whatever you want, it's yours. I turned and produced a blank sheet of paper. My first wish is for you to sign this. A collective gasp went through the crowd. 4 people of their wealth, signing a blank document was the ultimate taboo. If used by someone with malicious intent, the consequences would be catastrophic. How could someone as cautious as Chloe possibly sign it? She would have to be insane. But to everyone's astonishment, Chloe just gave me an indulgent smile and signed the paper without a moment's hesitation. There you go, honey. I clutched the paper, a wave of relief washing over me. With Chloe's signature in hand, I could now draft the divorce papers. From this day forward, Chloe and I would have nothing to do with each other. Seeing me smile, Chloe's mood brightened as well. Honey, what's your second wish? I looked out at the guests. Then a smirk played on my lips. My second wish is for you to transfer all of your shares in the Hayes Corporation to me. My words sent shock waves through the room. The crowd was in an uproar. Chloe's shares were worth tens of billions. No matter how much she doted on her husband, she couldn't possibly give him everything. And yet, Chloe immediately called her lawyers and instructed them to transfer every single one of her shares to my name, leaving nothing behind. I looked at the signed and stamped digital stock transfer agreement on my phone, feeling ecstatic. Once I sold these shares, I would be set for life abroad. I would have more than enough money to last 10 lifetimes. Chloe leaned against me gently. Honey, I have nothing now. I'm working for you. You can't leave me, okay? I parted my lips to speak, but a sudden gasp came from the crowd. Oh no, someone's fainted. Chloe looked up and saw that the person who had collapsed was Julian. Her expression changed in an instant, and she started to rush forward. Fortunately, some semblance of reason returned to her. She turned back to me. Ethan, I'm going to take him to the hospital. You stay here and enjoy yourself. Just text me your last wish. There isn't one. Chloe didn't hear me clearly. What? I shook my head. It's nothing. Go ahead. Watching her hurry away with Julian, I let out a small, soft laugh. Chloe, I don't need your help with my third wish because that wish is to leave you for good. 3 days before my departure, Julian sent me a video. It was the same venue as my birthday party. Julian was standing in the center of a pile of gifts, wearing a blue and white suit and a birthday hat. Chloe was hugging him from behind, pressing against him intimately. Happy birthday, my little prince. What are your wishes? Julian lifted his chin arrogantly. I want what Ethan had. You have to grant me any wish I make. Chloe stroked his cheek indulgently. Anything. For our little prince. I didn't reply. I just saved the video and left the house. I took the paper Chloe had signed to my lawyer's office. Mr. Ford, the divorce agreement is ready. As soon as you sign your name here, your marriage will be officially terminated. I nodded and signed my name without a moment's hesitation. From that point on, Chloe and I were complete strangers. 2 days before I left, Julian sent another video. In it, he was carefully pressing his ear to Chloe's stomach. Chloe smiled. The baby's only 3 months old. What could you possibly hear? Julian replied with complete seriousness. I heard him call me Daddy. Chloe's smile widened. The baby can't talk yet, but if you really want to hear it, I can give you an earful, Daddy. In that instant, Julian's Adam's apple bobbed, and he turned and pulled her into his arms. Again, I didn't reply. I called my lawyer and sold all the shares Chloe had given me. Then, I went to the bank, withdrew a portion of the money, and had it converted to foreign currency. On the day I left, I woke up very early. I had 3 things to do. First, I gathered all the gifts Chloe had given me over the years and gave them away to the household staff. The staff were both thrilled and confused as the gifts were priceless. I just smiled brightly. Something wonderful has happened recently, and I want to share my joy with all of you. Please don't feel awkward. Just accept them. Also, you don't need to clean the villa, cook, or water the plants today. You can all go home early. Overjoyed by this stroke of luck, the staff thanked me profusely and left with their arms full of gifts. Second, I compiled all of Julian's provocative texts, videos, and the recording he had sent me. I had 1,000,000 copies of the texts printed to be scattered across the city by drones. I arranged for the videos to be played on a loop on every digital billboard in Times Square. I had the audio recording set to blast from 1,000 speakers in the public plazas. Third, I finished packing my bags and placed the divorce certificate on the table. Just then, my phone rang. It was Chloe. Her voice was as gentle as ever. "Ethan, I'm almost finished here. I'll be home to be with you as soon as I'm done." I just grunted in response. "Perfect timing. I have a surprise for you." She sounded excited. "Really? What kind of surprise did you get me?" My voice was flat. "You'll see it as soon as you get back. Or maybe you'll see it on your way home if the timing is right." The text, the videos, and the recording. Chloe hung up full of anticipation. The sun was shining. I picked up my suitcase and got into the car heading for the airport without a single look back. Late that night, Chloe changed her clothes and left the hospital. As she drove closer to Riverside Manor, her guilt intensified. She had called me that afternoon, promising to be home that evening, and now it was so late. She could only imagine how upset I must be. And I had even told her I had a surprise waiting for her. She gripped the steering wheel in frustration, her eyes landing on the apology gift in the passenger seat. On her way home, she had called her assistant and had them pick out a new watch for me, one I had mentioned wanting a long time ago. It could serve as compensation for my birthday and for neglecting me these past few days. Chloe stared at the gift for a long time, only snapping out of it when the gates to Riverside Manor opened. She drove toward the villa, not even bothering to close the car door as she rushed inside with the gift in hand. "Ethan," click. The moment Chloe flipped on the living room light, she froze in place. The entire villa was empty. Besides her, there was no one else. She could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock on the wall and the frantic pounding of her own heart. Chloe stood frozen in the foyer for a long time before she managed to move her stiff legs and walk into the living room. Her eyes immediately fell on a splash of bright red on the table. Remembering what I'd said, Chloe hurried over. When she saw the words printed on the red booklet, the gift she was holding slipped from her grasp and crashed to the floor. The delicate box shattered and a shard of plastic scratched the watch face inside. Her vision swam and she fought to control her trembling hands as she picked up the divorce certificate from the table. The moment her fingers brushed against the embossed words, "divorce certificate," all the strength drained from her body. The woman who commanded boardrooms with an iron fist now lacked the courage to even open it. "Ma'am." The butler's voice snapped Chloe back to reality. Quickly stuffed the certificate into her pocket. She looked up to see the butler, Mr. Wallace, and a few other staff members standing nearby holding various items. "Ma'am, when Mr. Ford left today, he gave us all these gifts. He said he wanted to share his happiness with us. We felt they were far too valuable and tried to return them, but he insisted we take them. We don't feel right keeping them, so we thought it best to bring them to you." Chloe couldn't hear a word they were saying. Her eyes were fixed on the gifts in their hands. Every single one was something she had either made herself or painstakingly selected just for me. I had cherished them so much. Why would I suddenly cast them aside and give them all away? She touched the certificate in her pocket. It felt like it was burning so hot her hand began to shake. Yet her voice was unervingly calm, a calmness that surprised even herself. Mr. Wallace, you said he left today. Do you know where he went? She had to find me. She had to ask me why. They had been so happy. Why would I suddenly divorce her? Suddenly throw her away? The staff members looked at each other. We don't know, ma'am. We just saw that he seemed very happy when he left, so we didn't think to ask. Chloe took a deep breath and gestured for them to place the gifts on a nearby table. After they had done so, they quietly excused themselves. As Chloe stared at the mountain of gifts, she noticed a piece of paper sticking out from underneath the pile. She pulled the paper out and was about to toss it away when the writing on it caught her eye. The paper was torn in several places as if stabbed by the tip of a pen. Written on it was a list, the locations, dates, and number of times she and Julian had been together. I hadn't left her a single other word. After she read the last word, her knuckles turned white from how tightly she was gripping the paper. Just then, her phone began to vibrate. Frantically, she answered, and her assistant's panicked voice came through the line. It's a disaster, Miss Hayes. Someone printed out details about you and Mr. Miller and used drones to drop them all over New York City. We've managed to intercept most of them, but a lot of people still saw the flyers. The shareholders are calling demanding to know what's happening. Chloe crushed the paper in her hand. Get PR and legal on this immediately. I want it buried. Don't want to see or hear another word about this anywhere. She slammed the phone down, took one last look at the list, then crumpled it into a ball, shoved it in her purse, and stormed out the door. The black car roared back to life, shooting through the night like an arrow, finally screeching to a halt in front of the hospital. Chloe didn't even bother to close the door as she strode into the building. The young nurse on the night shift saw her approaching and quickly stood to greet her, but the words caught in her throat when she saw the thunderous expression on Chloe's face. The nurse then watched as Chloe marched directly into a patient's room and slammed the door behind her. The loud slam made the nurse jump and startled Julian awake. He groggy sat up, ready to yell at whichever inconsiderate nurse had woken him. But when he saw the woman standing by his bed, his anger instantly melted into delight. Chloe, what are you doing here? He had thought she would stay with him after they had been together earlier, but she had left. The thought of her spending the last few days with me had left a sour taste in his mouth. What did Ethan have that he didn't? He had just managed to fall asleep, and now here she was back with him. Proved she still cared about him. Feeling smug, Julian reached out to embrace her. But instead of an embrace, he felt a sudden tight grip around his neck. Chloe's hands were tight around his throat, her usually cool eyes blazing with fury. I told you I only love Ethan. I told you if you wanted to continue this, it had to be a secret. If he ever found out, it would be over. Immediately. Julian, where did you get the nerve to go and provoke him? Her voice grew colder, her grip tighter. Julian's face turned pale. He struggled, tears streaming down his face as he tried to explain. I didn't, Chloe. You have to believe me. I never said anything about us to Ethan. Chloe threw the crumpled paper from her purse at his face. You didn't? Then how does he know all of this? Julian's hands shook as he uncrumpled the paper. The color drained from his face. He scrambled out of bed and fell to his knees in front of her, crying and begging for forgiveness, trying to explain himself. He said he only did it because he loved her so much. He never thought Ethan would actually leave. Chloe looked down at him, her expression cold and dismissive. You love me, but I don't love you. If you hadn't climbed into my bed when I was drunk, none of this would have ever happened. Julian suddenly snapped, screaming at her with raw anguish. You don't love me? How can you not love me? He had given his youth to this woman. She was carrying his child. How could she not love him? Seeing Julian's crazed state, Chloe bent down and grabbed his chin, squeezing so hard it nearly dislocated. Who do you think you are to demand my love? If it weren't for Ethan's health condition, do you think you'd still be alive? You would have disappeared the day after you climbed into my bed. That day, She had woken up from a drunken night to find a naked Julian beside her. She had been furious and terrified. Furious that her best friend's little brother would be so audacious, and terrified that I would be heartbroken and leave her if I ever found out. Her only thought at the time was to get rid of Julian, but he had knelt and begged her for his life. Just then, her parents had called, pressuring her again about having a child, but I had been diagnosed with infertility. After she hung up, she thought of Julian. He could be the substitute. Once the child was born, she would make a deal with the Miller family, have them send Julian out of the country, and she would raise the child as if it were mine. That was her plan, and that's what she did. Everything had been going according to that plan, but now it was all ruined. The coldness in Chloe's words drained all the fight out of Julian. He slumped, letting his hands fall to his sides as he lowered his head. Though he was a son of the Miller family, he had been brought into the household as an illegitimate child. He soon discovered that besides the eldest legitimate son, there were a dozen other children born out of wedlock just like him. His father was always busy with other women, and his mother was always scheming to get more money out of him. He learned early on that, in families like theirs, love was the cheapest commodity. Julian had long given up on the fantasy of love, figuring that keeping her physically was good enough. But then she started treating him better. And better, even leaving me for him repeatedly. His feelings for her grew, and so did his greed. He didn't just want her to have his child. He wanted to marry her, to possess her completely. But now she was telling him without a shred of emotion that the only reason she kept him around was because I was infertile. A cruel light entered Chloe's eyes, but her voice remained cold and steady. I'm having the procedure tomorrow morning. Since I was gone, the baby in her womb was now useless. The lifeless Julian shot his head up, shaking it frantically. Chloe, you can't be so heartless. That's your child, too, he pleaded with her. The baby was his only leverage, his only protection. He couldn't lose it. Chloe didn't spare him a glance as she turned to leave. Julian scrambled to his feet to follow her, but his legs were numb from kneeling for so long, and he collapsed. He writhed on the floor in pain, crying out helplessly, "Chloe, please, I'm begging you, don't hurt our baby." She didn't look back at Julian and drove straight back to the villa, staring at a framed photo of the two of us. A sharp pain pierced her heart. She held the photo for a long time before finally picking up her phone and calling my friends and family. Chloe wanted to ask if any of them knew where I had gone. From the first call to the 99th, the answer was always no. She even swallowed her pride and called her biggest friend me, but all she got was ridicule and another no. Soon, the private investigators she hired came back with the same answer. Nothing. It was as if I had vanished into thin air. She hung up the phone, defeated, and sat in a chair, staring into space all night. The next day, as promised, she went to the hospital and had the abortion. When she woke up, Julian was by her bedside, his eyes red. "Chloe, why did you get rid of our baby?" Outside the room, having heard the news, was Julian's mother. "Chloe, dear, Julian told me you had a small procedure today, so I came to see how you are." Mrs. Miller set down a fruit basket, then turned and slapped Julian hard across the face. "Smack, Mom," Julian cried, clutching his swelling cheek and staring at his mother in disbelief. But his mother didn't think that was enough and slapped him again. "How could you be a kept man?" She was trembling with rage, but beneath it was a deep, profound sadness. The news about Chloe and Julian had spread all over New York City overnight. Even Julian's father had left his mistress's bed to rush home and demand an explanation from his wife. While the city's elite were no strangers to affairs, there was an unwritten rule that such things were never to be made public. And lately, the older generation had been cracking down on the younger ones. Julian's father had strictly forbidden any of his children from becoming a boy toy, getting someone pregnant, and especially from letting it become a public scandal. Julian had managed to break every single rule, and he had done it with Chloe Hayes of all people. Everyone knew how devoted Chloe was to me. Julian's father didn't care. Why Chloe had an affair. He only cared about the damage Julian's actions would do to the Miller family name. Miller. Industry stock would plummet. The eldest son's engagement, which had been a sure thing, would be in jeopardy. In a fit of rage and ignoring his wife's pleas, Julian's father had him officially downed, removing him from the family trust and issuing a press release that very night stating that Julian Miller was no longer associated with the Miller family. Mrs. Miller was filled with despair. From the day she had married into the family, she had planned her son's entire future, right down to who he would marry. And now Julian had destroyed it all. Suppressing her pain, she threw a credit card at Julian. "You're on your own now." Then, ignoring his hysterical sobs, she turned and walked away. Meanwhile, at the Hay estate, Chloe, still recovering from her procedure, had just returned home from the hospital. My uncle was there, and he roared at her. "Chloe, is this how you treat my nephew?" My uncle had lived a long life and had never been angry enough to fight with anyone, but now he was so furious with Chloe that his eyes were red and his voice trembled. My aunt and uncle had retired to the countryside and had only met Chloe once before at our wedding. This was the second time they had seen her. Although they rarely saw her, Chloe and I would call them every holiday, and she always sent thoughtful gifts. They had thought I had married a wonderful woman, but now that wonderful woman had not only cheated on me, but had gotten pregnant by another man. It was more than my uncle could bear. My uncle looked like he was about to strike her, but my aunt stopped him. "Let it go. Let's leave. The most important thing now is finding Ethan. As for her, we'll just pretend we never knew our nephew had a wife." My uncle lowered his hand and glared at Chloe. "From now on, you don't exist to us. And as far as we're concerned, Ethan never married you." Chloe had been in a daze ever since she found out I was gone. But my uncle's words finally snapped her out of it. She scrambled to her feet, wanting to run after them, to beg them not to be so cruel, to tell them she couldn't live without Ethan. But as she stood up, her vision went black and she collapsed. 7 months after I arrived in the States, I got a call from a friend back home. By then, the money from Chloe's shares had afforded me a very comfortable life. I bought a brownstone in Manhattan, rented out the ground floor as a flower shop and the second floor to a neighbor for his boutique, keeping the top floors for myself. My daily routine consisted of watering the plants on my balcony, drinking coffee, and reading the paper. I took a sip of coffee and gasped. Even after all this time, I still couldn't get used to the bitterness. I set the cup down on the small wrought iron table and answered the call. After the initial greetings, my friend spent the rest of the call updating me on Chloe and Julian. Apparently, after I left and exposed their affair, she had completely turned on him. She'd had the abortion, and my aunt and uncle had torn into her, downing her completely. The Hayes family had spent a fortune trying to bury the story, but it was too late. The scandal had spread through New York City like wildfire. It was so bad that the family patriarch, who had been in seclusion for years, ordered Chloe to be removed from her position as CEO and demanded she turn over all her shares. That's when they discovered that she had already transferred all her shares to me and that I had sold them to their biggest competitor. The Hayes family ended up paying several times the market price to buy them back. The whole affair cost the Hayes family billions of dollars and severely damaged their standing among the city's elite. If her mother hadn't begged, Chloe would have been thrown out of the family. In the end, her mother took pity on her and gave her some of her own shares. Chloe, now with nothing to do, apparently spent her days drinking and clutching a photo of me, calling out my name. As for Julian, after the scandal broke, the Miller family downed him, and he was fired from his job at the fashion magazine. He had no choice but to try and cling to Chloe. But she wanted nothing to do with him, and the Hayes family wouldn't let him near the estate. Desperate, he ended up on a hospital rooftop, threatening to jump unless he got a payout. He said he didn't need to marry her, but he needed money. The Hayes family refused to pay, so Chloe ended up giving him the money herself. But when he went to collect it, he tried to drug her again. This time, he wasn't so lucky. Chloe turned the tables on him and had him sent to prison. I felt nothing as I listened to the story. After all, Chloe and Julian were just two people who had nothing to do with me anymore. I chatted with my friend for a few more minutes, then hung up, stretched, and went inside. The next morning, I went to see a show on Broadway with a new friend. The tragic love story on stage brought the audience to tears, but after my own disastrous marriage, I couldn't feel a thing. The couple in the play were torn apart by war and family feuds. But in the end, they found their way back to each other in their old age. And me, I had married the woman I fell in love with at first sight, and we had been inseparable for years. But in the end, Chloe still betrayed me. The marriage I had poured my entire soul into had ended in ruins, and I had lost all faith in love. That evening, I sat scrolling through my phone, sipping my coffee. The bitter liquid filled my mouth, and just as I was about to grimace, my phone buzzed. My expression changed as I listened to the call. It was from the mayor of my uncle's small town. He told me with some hesitation that my aunt had fallen ill ever since she heard what Chloe had done. My uncle was trying to care for her while still teaching at the local school. The mayor said he hoped I might come back to visit if I had the time. After I hung up, my eyes stung with tears. After my parents, my aunt and uncle were the kindest people in my life. They had called me often since I'd been away, always telling me to take care of myself. They only ever shared good news, never the bad. If the mayor hadn't called, I have no idea how long they would have kept this from me. I immediately had my assistant book the earliest flight home for the next morning and started packing. When my aunt and uncle saw me standing on their doorstep, they were shocked and overjoyed. They pulled me inside and sat me down on the living room sofa. "Weren't you doing well in America? What are you doing back so suddenly?" "I just wanted to come see you," I said, placing the gifts I'd brought on the table. My aunt sighed. "Oh, you shouldn't have wasted the money on a trip back here." Seeing the concern on her face warmed my heart. I took her hand. "Auntie, I heard you haven't been feeling well. I'm taking you both to a hospital in the city tomorrow for a checkup." My aunt immediately waved her hands in protest. "I'm perfectly fine. Don't waste your money." The topic brought up old wounds, and her eyes welled with tears as she apologized to me again. She said if she had known what Chloe would become, she never would have let me marry her. I was long past being angry about it, and I certainly didn't blame them. I had known for a long time that Julian didn't like me. The very first time he saw Chloe, he had looked me in the eye and said, "Believe it or not, Ethan, she's going to be mine one day." The competitive fire in his eyes was intense, but I hadn't paid it any mind. Back then, Chloe loved me so much. I thought the whole world could cheat on their partners, but Chloe never would. Reality, however, had slapped me hard across the face. I insisted on taking them to a hospital in New York City for a full workup. My aunt's condition was a bit concerning, and the doctor recommended she stay for a few days for observation. I had her admitted to a private room that same day. To make things easier, I hired a private nurse to help and rented a townhouse near the hospital so my uncle would have a comfortable place to rest. My aunt and uncle were so touched it pained them. They tried to secretly give me money for the expenses, but I always secretly put it back. They eventually stopped trying to argue. One evening after the nurse's shift ended, I stepped out into the hallway to call the gardenia and order dinner for us. As I walked down the hall, I heard a nurse shouting from up ahead, "Make way! Critically ill patient coming through. For surgery. Make way!" Everyone in the hallway pressed themselves against the walls to get out of the way. As the gurney rushed past, pushed by a team of doctors and nurses, I saw the patient's face and froze. It was Chloe. If we hadn't spent 5 years together, I wouldn't have recognized her. She looked completely different. Her face was gaunt and deathly pale, and she reeked so strongly of alcohol that people around her were covering their noses. I dug my nails into my palm and was about to keep walking when I heard people whispering nearby. Was that Chloe Hayes? What happened to her? She brought it on herself. She had a perfect husband and threw it all away for that Miller kid. Heard she's been drinking herself into the hospital ever since her husband left. I didn't catch the rest of what they said. I walked to the end of the hall. A cold autumn wind blew through an open window, and I instinctively pulled my coat tighter. After I made my call, I sat down on a bench to wait. Soon, a few more people sat down on the bench across from me, chatting. It's a sad story. I heard that boy toy she cheated with had a rough time in prison. His mother had to pay a fortune to get him out on bail. The great M. Hayes is back in the hospital. I wonder if he'll come take care of her this time. If you ask me, she had a winning hand and threw it all away. She had a perfect life and chose to ruin it for some boy toy. I listened, stunned, until a delivery guy from the Gardenia handed me a large bag. I snapped out of it, thanked him, and carried the food back to the room. Once inside, I handed one of the meals to the nurse. The nurse thanked me and stepped out, leaving the three of us alone. Was distracted during dinner, thinking about what I'd overheard. My aunt put some food on my plate. Ethan, what's wrong? I snapped out of it and forced a smile, saying it was nothing. I was just thinking that with Chloe in the same hospital, if my aunt and uncle ran into her, the shock might make my aunt's condition worse. I had to find a way to keep them from seeing her. What I didn't know was that Chloe's parents had no intention of letting Julian go free. From the day he was released from prison and brought to the Hayes estate, they had him under 24-hour surveillance. They weren't worried about him running. With the Hayes family's influence all over New York, there was nowhere for him to go. The reason they kept him away from the hospital was because they knew how much Chloe despised him now. If she found out they had bailed him out, she might do something drastic. As for Julian, he had no intention of running. He had learned his lesson in prison. He knew the only reason he was out was because of his past connection to Chloe. The Hayes family had promised to forgive the massive debt from his bail if he could successfully get back into Chloe's good graces. So now he did whatever the Hayes family told him to do without complaint. He didn't even dare raise his voice to the staff. Everyone thought the secret was safe, but Chloe's parents had overlooked one person, her butler, Mr. Wallace. The butler had gone to the main estate to pick up some of Chloe's things and had walked in on the scene, even hearing Mrs. Hayes order the staff to keep quiet about it. He left immediately without the clothes. When Chloe woke up in the hospital, she saw Mr. Wallace hesitating by her bedside. "What is it now?" she asked impatiently. Her personality had changed a lot since I left. Mr. Wallace told her everything, that her parents had gotten Julian out of prison and the deal her mother had made with him. He also explained that her mother had ordered everyone to keep it a secret from Chloe, hoping to secure an heir for the Hayes family. After he finished, the butler stood by nervously, expecting an outburst. But surprisingly, Chloe just waved a dismissive hand, telling him to leave. Once the door was closed, she tossed the orange she was holding onto the nightstand and lay back, staring blankly at the ceiling. If only none of it had ever happened. She covered her face and let out a bitter, hollow laugh. But it had happened. Didn't even know where I was. How could they possibly have a child together? The night nurse, seeing her all alone, gently suggested she should have someone stay with her. The nurse then mentioned a patient in a private room downstairs, whose husband was doing on her and whose nephew had flown in from overseas to be with her, even hiring a private nurse, and never leaving her side. The nurse recalled what I looked like inside. A man that devoted and kind. I wonder if he's married. The nurse was lost in thought and didn't notice Chloe's hand suddenly clench into a fist. After a long pause, Chloe suddenly asked, "Do you know the nephew's last name?" The nurse was taken aback. "I think it was Ford." Oh, I'm not really sure. With that, the nurse pushed her cart out of the room. The second the door clicked shut, Chloe threw back the covers, slipped on her shoes, and ran out of the room. The closer she got to my aunt's floor, the more her heart pounded with excitement. It was me. It had to be me. At first, Chloe hadn't been paying attention. But when the nurse described my appearance, mentioning the small mole near the corner of my eye, she grew suspicious. I was the only person she knew with a mark like that. She started to get excited. And when the nurse mentioned the last name Ford, she knew for sure I was back and I was so close. Ignoring her own weak condition, Chloe ran downstairs and began searching room by room. Suddenly, she froze. A familiar, slender back was right in front of her. Ethan, her body moved before her mind could catch up. She ran after me, terrified that if she hesitated for even a second, I would vanish again. I heard the familiar voice and my hand paused on the doorknob. I glanced back instinctively and saw Chloe striding toward me. Without a second thought, I turned and ran down the stairs. I didn't have time to wonder how she'd found me. I just knew I couldn't face her. Sprinted out of the hospital and jumped into the first taxi I saw. Go, just drive. Just then, Chloe caught up, banging on the window. Ethan, please listen to me. I'm begging you. Don't go. I ignored her and told the driver to step on it. As the car sped away, Chloe started to run after it, but a sharp pain shot through her stomach, causing her to double over. Just then, a furious voice shouted her name. Chloe, my uncle, who had just arrived to relieve me, saw the scene and was filled with rage. How dare you show your face here and bother Ethan? Already weak from the pain, Chloe collapsed to the ground. Chloe's face was ashen. She reached out a hand as if grasping for something, but my uncle didn't even glance at her. He just turned and walked away. Don't let me see you again. The encounter left my aunt and uncle both furious and heartbroken for me. They were angry that Chloe still had the audacity to come after me. And they were heartbroken that after I had finally escaped her, I was now being harassed again because of them. My aunt became so agitated that she demanded to be discharged immediately so I could go back to the States. It took a great deal of persuasion to calm her down and convince her to stay. I had known from the moment I returned to New York that I would run into Chloe eventually. After all, this was her family's city. If she had wanted to, she could have found me the moment my plane landed. I thought about her banging on the taxi window, begging me, and I sighed. What was there to explain? I had laid it all out on that piece of paper. If she had understood, she wouldn't be looking for me now. But Chloe had finally found me again. She wasn't going to give up that easily. She had so much she wanted to tell me to explain everything about her and Julian. She didn't love him. Said she only wanted me. But from that day on, I avoided her completely. She waited outside my aunt's new room for days, enduring the cold glares of my aunt and uncle and the whispers of passers-by, but she never once caught a glimpse of me. That night, after waiting late again with no sign of me, Chloe was about to give up and leave when she saw a tall, slender figure walking down the hall. Her dull eyes instantly lit up. Ethan, I stopped and looked at her coldly, then walked right past her and into the empty room, closing the door behind me. My aunt had been moved that morning, but we had left a few things behind. I thought I could slip back late at night to retrieve them, but I hadn't expected her to still be here. The sound of the door closing snapped Chloe back to reality. She rushed to the door and knocked. Ethan, I know you can hear me. Please, just let me explain. I never meant to hide it from you. He took advantage of me when I was drunk. I was going to get rid of him, but then my parents called, pressuring me about having a baby, and I couldn't stand them blaming you all the time. So, she trailed off, perhaps too ashamed to say the rest. But we both knew what she meant. On the other side of the door, I leaned against the wood, my eyes filled with bitter irony. The day I found out, the pain had been so intense I could barely breathe. She had so many other options, so many better ways to handle the situation. But she chose the most degrading one. And even if she had just paid Julian off, he was still a man she had slept with. Knowing her, she would have eventually gone back to him behind my back anyway. The simplest solution would have been to go to our bedroom that night. But the truth is her attitude toward Julian had started to change long before that night. It used to be that my name was the only man's name she ever mentioned. Then slowly she started talking about Julian. Looking back, Julian climbing into her bed just gave her the perfect excuse. I closed my eyes in anguish. No matter how much Chloe pleaded from the other side of the door, I remained silent. Hours passed, but she was still outside pleading as if she wouldn't leave until I gave her an answer. Her choked sobs were driving me crazy, and they were starting to disturb the other patients on the floor. The patient in the next room opened his door to complain, but when he saw it was Chloe Hayes, he swallowed his words and suddenly shut his door again. Chloe turned back to my door about to speak, when it suddenly swung open. Ethan, the joyful smile on her face froze when she saw the ice in my eyes. Chloe, I already said everything I had to say. You claim you love me, that you only slept with Julian for my sake. But what about all the times after that? Weren't you the one who initiated it every single time I saw you? I even heard you. I dug my nails into my palm. So much time had passed, but the memory of her and Julian together still made me sick to my stomach. What's tainted is tainted. Stop making excuses. We were over the day you cheated on me. I looked away from her, ready to leave with the items I'd come for. But Chloe grabbed my arm in a panic. No, it's not like that. I'm not tainted. Ethan, if you think I'm dirty, I'll go wash myself clean right now. Just please don't say we're over. I ripped my arm from her grasp, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. Then you shouldn't have cheated in the first place. She was the woman I loved, and she had betrayed me. Why, Chloe? Why did you cheat? Why were you in bed with another man when I needed you? How could you look me in the eye after that and still tell me you loved me? My voice was calm, but my words were daggers, each one plunging deeper into her heart. Backed her against the wall until she had nowhere left to go. The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. I stepped back, the smirk fading from my face. Chloe, if I could do it all over again, I would wish I had never met you. Then I wouldn't have had to endure so much pain. I looked at her, her eyes filled with anguish. She had offered so many explanations, but they were all meaningless in the face of her infidelity. They were nothing but a pathetic joke. I watched her, my expression unreadable. When she finally fell silent, I asked quietly, "Are you finished?" She flinched, then nodded quickly, looking at me with the terrified eyes of a child awaiting punishment. I gave her no response. I had already wasted too much time here. If I didn't get back soon, my aunt and uncle would worry. I turned to leave. "Don't try to see me again." As my words hung in the air, Chloe slid to the floor, watching me walk away with an expression of utter despair. Did I hate her that much? Was I really unwilling to give her even a sliver of a chance? A long moment passed, and a bitter smile touched her lips. Perhaps my words had finally gotten through to her because I didn't see Chloe for the next several days. After my aunt was discharged, I had them stay with me at the townhouse, promising to show them around the city before they went back home. One afternoon, while my aunt and uncle were napping, I decided to go out for a walk. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see Mr. Wallace and some of the other staff from the villa standing on my doorstep. They quickly gathered around me. "Mr. Ford, we heard you were back in the country and wanted to come and see you." Very few people besides Chloe knew I was back. I hid the flash of coldness in my eyes and invited them inside, but they declined, explaining their purpose for coming while still standing on the porch. Apparently, after I left, they had returned the gifts I'd given them to Chloe. A few days later, Chloe had given them new gifts, thanking them for taking such good care of me over the years. Having accepted her gifts, they felt they owed her. They had come to try and persuade me to give her another chance, saying that she deeply regretted her mistakes. They said they couldn't bear to see her in such a miserable state. I found it laughable since Chloe couldn't get to me herself. She had sent others to do her bidding. I knew they meant well, so I just smiled and said nothing. Taking the hint, they made some small talk and then left. The encounter had ruined my mood for a walk, so I went back inside for a nap. But my sleep was fitful and uneasy. I hadn't dreamed of Chloe once during my months away. But now I was dreaming of her, and we were at our wedding. In the dream, she stood before me, holding the wedding ring she had designed herself, gazing lovingly at the man in the white suit. "Ethan, will you marry me? I will be loyal to you, love you, and be with you for the rest of my life. I will never betray you." The man in front of her finally moved, revealing a handsome but unfamiliar face. It wasn't me, it was Julian. But Chloe didn't seem to notice and continued to gaze at him with adoration. Just as Julian was about to speak, I jolted awake. I stared out the window, shaken. It had been a very strange dream. Knock, knock. "Ethan, are you awake?" My aunt called from the other side of the door. I splashed some water on my face and called out, "I'm up, Auntie." She came in and handed me an invitation, saying a friend had sent it over. I then remembered running into an old friend shortly after I got back. We had chatted for a bit before we parted ways. He had asked for my address, saying he'd be sending out his wedding invitation soon. I thanked her and opened the envelope. It was indeed his wedding invitation. He was an old friend. So, the next day I went to the mall to buy him a gift. As I reached the second floor, I saw a large group of people heading my way, parting the crowd. As they went, I quickly stepped into a nearby store to get out of their way. As they passed, something made me look up. My eyes widened in shock. It was Julian. He had once been the picture of a handsome, vibrant young man, but now he looked like a frail old man. He was painfully thin, little more than skin and bones, and he shuffled along, looking utterly lifeless. I wasn't the only one shocked by his appearance. People around him were whispering, "Is that Julian Miller? I can't believe it. What happened to him? Are the Hayes starving him?" Someone nearby scoffed, "Are you kidding? My sister works for the Hayes family. She says they practically force-feed him, but the man has no luck left. He throws up everything he eats. And on top of that, ever since Chloe found out he was staying at the estate, she's been finding new ways to torment him every day. If his mother wasn't watching him like a hawk, he'd probably be dead by now. They only let him out for some air because he's in such bad shape." I pushed aside my complicated feelings and walked into another store. Everyone assumed Julian would be living in luxury after the Hayes family bailed him out, but that clearly wasn't the case. He couldn't even go for a walk without being watched around the clock, like a prisoner in the yard. But I felt no pity for him. He had brought all of this on himself. I put him out of my mind and focused on finding a gift. On the day of the wedding, I saw Chloe. The smile instantly vanished from my face. The ceremony had just ended. Without even staying for the reception, I asked the person next to me to give my apologies to the groom and headed for the door. I had completely forgotten that the groom was not only my friend, but also one of Chloe's old college classmates. Seeing me leave, Chloe immediately got up and ran after me. "Ethan," she cried, grabbing my arm. "Ethan, I can answer your question from the other night. I only did it because I couldn't bear to see you suffer because of your infertility. That's why I let Julian take your place. I was only nice to him because I was worried about the baby. Since you don't like him, I'll get rid of him. I'll never make another mistake again. I promise." She looked at me with desperate hope in her eyes, as if a single nod from me would be enough for her to have Julian killed. I looked at her, my heart filling with disappointment. After all this time, she was still blaming me for her affair, claiming she only did it because of my condition. She still thought I had left her because of Julian. She seemed to think I was agreeing with her. The thought that getting rid of Julian would bring me back to her made her more and more agitated, and she leaned in to kiss me. Smack. My hand connected with her cheek before her lips could touch mine. Chloe, are you insane? I realized then that she had never once considered herself to be the cause of our failed marriage. She genuinely believed that if she could just fix the problem, I would come back to her. But she was the problem. The thought that the woman I once loved was now capable of such cruelty filled me with disappointment. How did you become this person? What? Can't you see that you are the problem? Chloe clutched her stinging cheek, stunned. After a moment, a bitter smile formed on her lips. I am crazy. Every single night since you left, I have nightmares. You're always leaving me. Always telling me you don't want me. The nightmares are driving me insane. I'll do anything to get you back. With that, she turned and walked away, disappearing into the pouring rain. Chloe, I shouted, but she didn't stop. She was completely insane. I heard later that Chloe, in her desperate attempt to win me back, had some men break Julian's legs and dump him in some remote rural town. The trauma drove him mad. Seeing that he was now useless to her plans, Chloe's mother gave up on him, paid him off, and washed her hands of the whole affair. In that small town, Julian clutched the bank card and finally broke down, sobbing. Everything was gone. The Millers didn't want him. Chloe didn't want him. What reason did he have to live? He fell apart, but no one offered him any comfort or pity. The locals just rolled their eyes at his pathetic wailing. But then a slender figure appeared in his doorway, and a neighbor, who had been watching, quickly bowed and skewered away. Ms. Hayes. Chloe ignored the man and stood before Julian's door. When his sobs subsided, she pushed the door open and went inside. Julian stared at her, his shock quickly turning to pure hatred. Are you satisfied now, Chloe? Look at what you've done to me. I have nothing left. Chloe looked at his contorted face and sneered. Satisfied? I think you got off easy. The thought that this man had made a fool of her had cost her me, sent a fresh wave of rage through her. She strode forward and grabbed his chin, her voice like ice. You should be grateful you're still breathing. The worst is yet to come. The hatred in Julian's eyes was slowly replaced by terror. During his time at the Hayes estate, he had learned just how ruthless Chloe could be. Even with his mother's people watching him around the clock, Chloe's people had still found ways to get to him, to torment him. If he hadn't been so lucky, he would have been dead already. Feeling him tremble in her grasp, Chloe's eyes darkened. If it weren't for the fact that I disapproved of her cruelty, Julian wouldn't still be alive. Shoved him away in disgust and wiped her hand with a handkerchief. Stay out of my sight. If I ever see you again, what I did to your legs will seem like a mercy. With that, she slammed the door, leaving him alone with her vicious threat, which sent a shiver down his spine. Back in New York, I said a reluctant goodbye to my aunt and uncle, seeing them off in the car I had arranged to take them home. With my family taken care of, it was time for me to go back to my new life. Staying here would only bring more pain. I quickened my pace, planning to talk to the landlord about ending my lease. What? You're saying someone already bought the place and put it in my name? I stared at the old man, my eyes wide. The old man, rocking in his chair, handed me the deed. See for yourself. Your name's right there. Took the papers, suspicious. And there it was, my name clear as day. I recognized the handwriting and frowned. Just as I was about to speak, the old man pointed toward the door. And there's the person who bought it for you. I looked up and saw a figure silhouetted in the doorway looking at me with that same gentle expression from years ago. Ethan, Chloe, what is this? I said, thanking the landlord as I pulled her outside. I don't need this from you. A flash of pain crossed her eyes. She tried to hug me, but I pushed her away. Ethan, it's my way of making things right. Solved our biggest problem. Julian is gone. He'll never bother us again. So, please, can you just give me one more chance? I shook my head. A chance? Chloe, I did consider giving you a chance. Her eyes lit up, but then fell. As I continued, if you had come to our bedroom that night, or if you had told me the truth the next day, maybe we could have worked through it. But you didn't. You and Julian were together in every corner of that house, even right next to me. That night at the club when you were with him, I realized all your friends knew about it, too. I shoved my cold hands in my pockets inside. In that moment, I wondered if I was the only fool in the world, the only one you weren't letting in on the secret. I gave a small, bitter laugh. So, to punish you, I took all your shares on my birthday. I don't need this townhouse. Your buying it for me means nothing. I turned to leave, but her arms wrapped tightly around my waist. I looked down at her hands, and as I was about to pull them away, she whispered, her voice trembling, "Ethan, I'm so sorry." My words had finally gotten through to her. She was finally ready to admit her own mistakes. She would apologize, try to make it up to me, and beg for my forgiveness, but it was too late. Could have apologized the day after it happened. She could have apologized while there was still a part of me that loved her, but she couldn't apologize now, not after my heart had turned to stone. I stood there for a long moment, then gently removed her hands and walked away. "Ethan," she cried, blocking my path. She asked why I wouldn't give her another chance. From the moment she saw me again, she had been trying to win me back, but nothing she said or did could move me. You used to love me so much. Why can't you give me another chance? If you hate the house because he was there, I'll sell it. If you hate the gifts I gave you, I'll buy you new ones. If you think I'm tainted, I'll wash myself 1,000 times. But what if it's your heart that's tainted? I asked. She had no answer. I smiled, and without another glance, I left her standing there alone. The next day, I started packing for my return trip. I had offered to bring my aunt and uncle back with me, but they had lived in their small town their whole lives and couldn't bear to leave. I didn't press the issue. Before I left their house, I secretly tucked a bank card under their pillow. That night I met up with some old friends for a farewell dinner. "Who knows when we'll see you again after you leave?" one of them said sadly. "We'll come visit you in the States when we get the chance." I nodded, and we all exchanged addresses. We drank and talked late into the night. I finished my tea and was about to call the waiter for a refill, when one of my drunker friends insisted on getting it himself. We all tried to get him to sit down, but he grabbed the teapot and stumbled out of the room. A moment later, we heard shouting. We all looked at each other and rushed out to see our friend in a shoving match with another group of drunk men. My heart clenched, and my friends and I moved to intervene. Suddenly, one of the men grabbed a bottle and swung it at my head. "Ethan," a panicked voice cried out. And in the next second, Chloe, who had appeared out of nowhere, shoved me out of the way. The bottle shattered against her head, and glass and blood rained down on the floor. The entire restaurant fell silent for a beat, then erupted into chaos. "He's killed her," someone screamed, but Chloe ignored the commotion, frantically checking me over from head to toe. When she was sure I was unharmed, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. I looked at her coldly. "You didn't have to do that, Chloe. I would have dodged it. I had taken self-defense classes during my time away. If she hadn't interfered, I would have had the man on the ground in seconds." Her hand, which had been gripping my shoulder, fell away. I was telling her that I could take care of myself now, that I was fine without her. Unlike her, who had apparently fallen apart. Just as she was about to speak, the restaurant manager arrived with his staff. The manager directed his staff to give Chloe first aid while he tried to control the chaos. But Chloe just stood They're unmoving, and reached for my hand. I pushed her hand away and told my friends I would help them get the man who had attacked me to the hospital. But one of them stopped me, saying the night was supposed to be my farewell dinner, and they were sorry it had turned into such a mess. They felt too guilty to trouble me any further. He gently pushed me toward the door, telling me to go home and finish packing. I didn't argue, I just turned and left. Ethan. Chloe had been watching me, and when she heard my friend mention packing, a look of panic crossed her face. She grabbed my hand. Ethan, you're packing? Where are you going? The staff had cleaned the blood from her forehead, leaving a nasty gash. That, combined with the panic in her eyes, made her look both pathetic and ridiculous. I didn't answer, just tried to pull my hand away, but her grip was like iron. Tell me, where are you going? She asked, her voice trembling. I remained cold and silent. Ethan. I finally met her gaze and said, where I'm going is none of your business. While she was stunned into silence, I yanked my hand free and walked out the door. Ethan. She started to run after me, but in the next instant, a speeding car slammed into her. I spun around, my eyes wide with horror at the scene before me. The accident left Chloe paralyzed from the waist down. She became a shell of her former self, spending her days clutching our wedding photo and whispering my name. People who knew us couldn't bear to see it and came to me urging me to visit her. After all, they said we had been husband and wife. But every time I refused, what was there to see? Whatever had been between us was long dead. Eventually, they all gave up and left me alone. One day, after sending away yet another person who had come to plead Chloe's case, I was about to close the door when a woman's voice called out, "Wait." I looked up and saw Chloe's mother standing before me, her eyes filled with a deep weariness. I offered her a cup of tea. She accepted it with a quiet thank you and, after a sip, explained that she had come to ask me again to visit Chloe in the hospital. Seeing the pleading look in her eyes, I was taken aback. From the day I married her daughter, she had despised me. No matter what I did, it was never good enough. Her eyes had always been cold when she looked at me. This was the first time I had ever seen her look at me with anything resembling warmth. My grip on my teacup tightened. "I'm sorry," I said, "but whatever was between Chloe and me is over. The fact that I don't hate her is the most I can offer." At my words, she seemed to age another 10 years. But the thought of her daughter in that wheelchair made her press on. "But you were married for 5 years. Loved you so much. She would have done anything for you." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "And what good did that love do? She still cheated on me. And it wasn't just her hiding it. Her friends hid it. And I'm sure you knew about it, too, didn't you? After the scandal with the drones, there was no way she couldn't have known." As I expected, her expression faltered. From the day we were married, she had been pressuring Chloe to have a child. But I was infertile, and Chloe loved me enough not to care. This infuriated her mother, who had never treated me with anything but disdain. So when she found out Chloe was pregnant with Julian's child, she had thrown all propriety to the wind, conveniently forgetting that infidelity was a great shame to the Hayes family. She didn't care that her husband was furious with her or that I was heartbroken. All that mattered to her was getting a grandchild. Seeing her reaction confirmed my suspicions. A bitter irony filled me. She had supported her daughter's affair, and now she was here trying to persuade me to go back to her. "Mrs. Hay, please go back and tell your daughter that she's not just torturing herself, she's torturing me. Isn't the pain she's already caused me enough? Does she want to drive me to my grave?" I made a gesture toward the door, indicating our conversation was over. She had no choice but to leave. Back at the hospital, when Chloe saw her mother return alone, the last spark of hope in her eyes died. She said nothing, just waved her mother away. She picked up our wedding photo, and a tear of regret fell on my smiling face. She had known from the very beginning that if she hadn't wanted it, Julian would never have ended up in her bed. But she had told herself over and over that she was only doing it for me. But with each betrayal, a part of her had fallen for Julian. How ironic! The woman who had stood at the altar and promised to be faithful to me forever had been the one to betray me. She set the photo down. Her lifeless eyes flickered, finally landing on the fruit knife on her bedside table. I had asked her what she would do if her heart was tainted. Now she finally had an answer. She would cut it out. She's dead. The night nurse screamed when she saw the bloody scene in the hospital room. Down the hall, Chloe's mother heard the scream, and the thermos she was carrying slipped from her grasp and crashed to the floor. Shoved past the horrified nurse and saw the scene inside. Her legs gave out and she collapsed to her knees. Chloe was lying in her bed looking peaceful with a fruit knife plunged deep into her heart. When I heard the news of Chloe's death, I stood frozen for a long time. A single tear escaped and rolled down my cheek, snapping me back to reality. I wiped it away and without a word, I picked up my suitcase and walked out the door. As the plane took off, I looked out the window. For one last time, I would never return to New York City.